You are now listening to a B30 exclusive mini episode where questions submitted by loyal listeners will be answered to the best of my ability. Now, there was a question submitted earlier this month concerning Sochi 2014 and how Russia has a strong anti-gay culture and government policy, where basically any public displays of affection of the homosexual nature is considered an arrestable offense. And they're not kidding. I read on Twitter during an ice skating event, some person stood up and shouted, "It's okay to be gay," and that person got thrown out immediately. And let's just hope that person didn't get the Russian stray dog treatment. Yikes. Also, I'm 90% sure Russian President Vladimir Putin publicly stated that Russia has no gay people. It just doesn't make sense to me why such a morally strict nation would want to host an Olympic event which attracts people of all different nations and cultures who vary in terms of their views on sexual orientation. And more importantly, how should Christians respond to such intolerance when it comes to notions of inclusion, equality, and sexuality? Well, I find that this topic has 3 layers. The first layer is, are the religious beliefs of Russia interconnected with its government policy? In other words, does the quote-unquote church still have moral influence on the state's lawmaking? So in this day and age, I just assume every nation operates under the rule that church and state are separate. But to the best of my knowledge, Russia is predominantly Russian Orthodox, and the next biggest religious presence would be the Muslims, which is 2 religions that oppose homosexuality, gay marriage, the whole package. Thus, it is a strong possibility that the predominant cultural values of the nation have influenced the policy making of Russia, which is discriminating against homosexuals. The thing is, when I envision a government entity, its legitimacy lies in its ability to uphold civil equality and liberty. Basically, the government's ethical responsibility is to protect its citizens regardless of your gender, class, race, and in this case, your sexual orientation. Why the Russian government chooses not to live up to this noble ideology that most first world nations kind of adhere to is something that I can't answer, and I think only Russia can answer. Now, with that being said, we as non-Russians may need to bracket our own biases and look at this issue from a more objective lens. Which brings me to the second layer of this topic, and that is, we as skeptics need to practice the social science concept known as cultural relativity, where we need to acknowledge and respect the Russian anti-gay cultural values, regardless of how you feel about it personally. And it is important that we don't impose our own self-perceived progressive values on another nation. As Russia is the hosting nation, the athletes and attendees of the festivities should be considerate, courteous, and comply with the local customs and values, which in this case is to refrain from homosexual PDA, I guess. To put things into perspective, when I took an 100 level anthropology course back in the day, we were studying up on a particular Samoan tribe. I think it's Manomami, I'm not sure. Basically that Polynesian island area. And for this tribe, they have this particular rites of passage where male teens or late teens who are ready to transition to young adulthood, they are required to ingest the seminal fluid of the male tribe leadership, or I think specifically from their own fathers. Now, my guess on the rationale behind that ritual is the younger generation is ingesting the vitality and inner essence of the older generation. Thus, when you're ingesting your predecessor's, how should I say, love nectar, he's symbolically transferring his, masculine strength and hunting prowess to you or something. Now, I'm sure your gut reaction after hearing that is, dude, that's gross and indigenous tribes are so primitive. But if you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, who are we to judge their cultural customs? What gives us the authority to say North American cultural beliefs are morally superior to the indigenous ways of life? Thus, in the same manner, we as North Americans need to slow down and have to accept Russia's cultural values and their standards for what they are. And that is, anti-gay sentiments are considered ethical conduct in their society. Alright, I think that's 2 points already, and now on to the final point, which is the moral mixed messages that the Russian government and Olympic Committee is sending. So just to make sure we're on the same page, gay people can't hold hands, hug, or go to first base in public, but I heard on the radio that the Olympic staff, on behalf of the hosting nation, has provided over 135,000 condoms at the athletes' village and other event locations. So there's a zero tolerance for anything remotely homosexual, but apparently orgies and promiscuous sexual activity after you're done competing at your respective Olympic competition is like a thumbs up. What's interesting is there's most likely gay Olympic athletes competing at Sochi, and once they're in party mode at the athletes' village, who's going to stop them from engaging in homosexual activity, right? And what's ironic is, can you imagine there's like gay dudes who want to hook up or get it on? And they're probably going to use the very same condoms that were provided to them by the anti-gay government or Olympic staff. Very interesting. But that's not the disturbing part of it all. To kick Russia's anti-gay policy up a gear, CNN reported a week ago that Russia has now decided to ban adoptions by same-sex couples. Even single people from countries where same-sex marriage is legal are banned from adopting orphans too. So you rather have homeless and starving orphans, which your government can't afford to take care of, suffer and die before your eyes, than to allow gay people the permission to feed, clothe, and shelter these downtrodden orphans. I guess homosexuality, according to Russia, is so evil that it is worth letting innocent orphans suffer than for them to have same-sex parents. Which leads me to this main question of, what is the Christian response to this anti-gay policy? How should Christians stand firm in their position against homosexuality without being homophobic? Well, I don't have the authority or the know-how to answer that, so I'm going to pass the ball off to Catholic Archbishop of Dublin by the name of Diarmuid Martin, and here's what he had to say. God never created anybody that he doesn't love. Anyone who doesn't show love towards gay and lesbian people is insulting God. They are not just homophobic if they do that, they are actually God-phobic because God loves every one of those people. Just because a person isn't in favor of gay marriage doesn't mean that one is homophobic. Now, when asked about whether the Catholic Church was a homophobic institution, Archbishop Martin added, "People in the Catholic Church may be homophobic. Certainly, the teachings of the Catholic Church could be used by some people in a homophobic way, and we have to be very careful that this shouldn't be done." So there you have it. A conservative Irish Catholic clergyman thinks Christians should stand firm in opposing homosexuality without being homophobic. How much of Archbishop Martin's views do you agree with? How much of it is biblically sound? I'll let you decide, because you know what? Show's over. We're done here. So thanks for listening, and goodbye.